We all know about the beginning of our country on 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. Washington wasn't directly connected to that, but he was connected to what happened right after that, the Revolutionary War. We pegged 1776 as the beginning of our country, but that was not the year when Washington took office as president. As a matter of fact, it would be 13 years before he would become president of the United States. The Declaration of Independence was followed by 6 years of tense fighting. Now, Washington did not have the supplies, the troops, or the money he needed to fight a good war. In contrast, England had all the money and power of the crown behind it to stamp out the rebels, and they thought it wouldn't be hard. But Washington used his great cleverness to defeat them, thinking about what he had at his disposal. Rather than staging usual conflict, he used the military tactic of making bold little attacks and quickly retreating. This confused the British soldiers because they weren't used to that. They thought it wasn't sporting to not just come out and fight like a man. Yet that was all Washington and his troops could do because they were so badly outnumbered. As they were fighting this great war, they had to deal with extreme cold, harsh weather, a lack of food, a lack of good clothing, sometimes even marching for miles without any boots. And a lot of men died because of the illnesses which would sweep throughout the camp. But through it all, Washington kept inspiring him with his belief in the idea that they were fighting for a good cause, even if it seemed really hard. When they finally won, America had its freedom, and he returned to his peaceful home back in Virginia. In fact, even before the Revolution, Washington was involved with state politics because he was part of the House of Burgesses as a representative of Virginia. After the Articles of the Confederation proved to be a very inadequate form of government for a few years, the Continental Congress came together to write the Constitution, and Washington was there as a representative of Virginia. After this was ratified, the time came for a president to be elected. The voting process was so different than it would be in modern times, or even a few years later. There was simply a group of the Electoral College, and each man cast 2 votes. It was unanimous. Everyone voted for George Washington to be the first president. He holds the distinction of being the only U.S. president to have been unanimously elected. He was also unanimously elected for his second term of office. Everyone knew that he was the man for the job. Now, why was it that everyone could agree? It wasn't just that everyone got along so well back then, because the next president wasn't unanimously elected, and it wasn't that there weren't differing political ideas at the time. But why was Washington so popular? Why did everyone think that he was the man for the job? There are a couple of reasons why Washington holds that distinction. Firstly, he'd shown that he knew what America was and what it needed to be. He brought the country to such great victory during the war. He also had a good political background because he'd been part of different houses, as first in Virginia and then on the national scale, part of the writing of the Constitution. He'd proven that he knew what this new form of government needed to be or should be. One reason, which isn't considered as much, is the fact that he was childless. Some people were against having any kind of leader because they thought, we'll just be having another king. Why did we fight so hard to get rid of King George III if we're just going to have a king here in America by electing someone? Because surely if we put someone in as a president of some kind, he'll take over. He'll end up becoming some kind of a tyrant. But Washington didn't have any children. He had 2 stepchildren who both had sadly died by this point. And his grandchildren were so far removed, so they knew, whereas a king might have a son he wants to inherit his throne or his office, Washington had no son. He had no daughter. He had no heir whom he might want to follow in his footsteps. So that was one reason why people trusted him. Also, he holds the distinction of being the only president not affiliated with any political party. He didn't think there should be political parties. He was very much opposed to that. And it's not that there weren't different political ideas at the time.